Finally, the time has come for my final 2015 NBA mock draft. I've enjoyed doing these NBA mock drafts. I've enjoyed reading some of your reactions, both kind and sometimes less than kind. And I hope you guys have enjoyed me doing these NBA mock draft videos. I'll plan on doing them again next year. How about that? All right, so anyways, my final mock draft is a 2-round edition with trades in round number 1, as I promised, and it's all in the description box down below. Now, before I talk about some of the picks, I'm not obviously going to talk about every single pick because it is, frankly, a bit of a waste of time. If you have questions about a specific pick that I have or a specific approach or philosophy for a team or other general questions about the NBA draft, feel free to ask those away in the comment section down below, and we'll discuss it there. Now, in terms of this draft, I did a video just very recently talking about how I thought this draft class was better than it was getting credit for. And as time's gone along, I've come to like this draft class more and more, and I actually think it's better than the draft class that was so ballyhooed and hyped last year. That's just my opinion. I look at this draft as having something for everybody. If you need a point guard, there are point guards there. If you need an athletic wing, you've got athletic wings there. If you need some shooters, there are some shooters there. If you need that stretch type of 4, there are stretch 4s there. If you need big men down low, there's at least a few of those options there. Later on in the draft, if you need draft and stash guys, those guys are going to be available in abundance in round number 2. And it's got something for everybody. And some guys that I think can really develop into all-star caliber players. Now, in terms of the overall process of me going through this mock draft, I'm not guaranteeing it's going to be spot on. I'm not going to guarantee it's going to be perfect. And, it could start being wrong as soon as pick number 3, honestly. But I'm going off of situations and scenarios that I could see playing out based off of certain guys falling or rising, what type of draft pick currency certain teams have, what desire they may have to move up or down and for what reasons. I'm also taking out any potential trades like a DeMarcus Cousins trade. I'm not factoring that in because I'd be stunned still if that would happen, because if it did, Sacramento would be stupid, what have you. Okay, so anyways, let's talk about some of what's going on here, or at least with the first round of this 2015 NBA mock draft, the final edition. Number picks 1 and 2, I've got Karl-Anthony Towns going to Minnesota and Jahlil Okafor going to the Lakers. It's been that way probably for a little bit in most people's minds in terms of those guys going 1 and 2. I thought there was a point in time where maybe Okafor had a chance to drop just a little bit, but it looks like it's a pretty safe bet, I would think, at least at this moment, that Okafor ends up going number 2 to the Lakers. Now, to me, this draft really, truly begins with that 3rd overall pick where the Philadelphia 76ers are. And to me, they're really kingmakers for this entire process for other teams and most certainly for themselves. They have options. They could sit there and stay put at number 3 and take a guy like D'Angelo Russell. They could stay put at number 3 and take a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, the stretch power forward from Latvia. They could also trade down. And in this particular scenario, I decided to have the Philadelphia 76ers trade down. I've seen reports that Porzingis' perhaps most desired destination outside of perhaps LA is Orlando. I could see where Orlando would want a guy like him that, while he would take time to develop, could be a special type of player and a real matchup nightmare for teams all throughout the Eastern Conference. And I could see Orlando wanting to roll the dice, looking at recent picks that they have had, like Oladipo and Aaron Gordon and Elfrid Payton, maybe wanting to focus a little more on the front court. And while Porzingis at this point isn't a great rebounder or shot blocker, an immediate contributor there or as a defender, his offensive upside is through the roof. 7'1.5" with a 7'6" wingspan. I mean, this guy can shoot. He can handle the rock. He's a better athlete than he's given credit for. I can see Orlando really falling in love with this guy and looking at him as being a star in the making and wanting to move up from 5 to 3 in order to get him, which would mean the New York Knicks have to be sitting there and doing backflips if a guy like D'Angelo Russell falls into their lap. I'm not guaranteeing it's going to happen. I hope for all parties involved, frankly, it does happen, because the league does need the Knicks to be a little more relevant than they are. And D'Angelo Russell will most certainly make them more relevant than they are. The Knicks would have no option if Russell fell to them at 4. They would have to take him. They couldn't possibly be that stupid, could they? wonders never cease. We are talking about the Knicks after all. But you're talking about a guy in Russell who fits the triangle offense very, very well. You're talking about a guy who could play with Karl-Anthony very, very well. A guy that can make an impact with the ball in his hands or not in his hands, with his ability to move off of screens and play without the ball. A guy with incredible court vision. Just could do so many things. If the New York Knicks got D'Angelo Russell with the 4th overall pick, they're probably the biggest winners of the draft because they probably thought they were going to have to get the 2nd pick in order to get him. Now, in terms of the 76ers, I've got them being a very active team in this draft process in 2015, both in terms of trading down from 3 to 5 and then trading up. You'll see a total of 3 first-round picks for the Philadelphia 76ers. I've got them taking Mudiay at number 5. I think he makes sense for them because they need a point guard. Well, frankly, they just need players. And if they're not going to take Porzingis and they're not going to take Russell, then they could still trade back to number 5, get some additional draft pick currency, maybe a 2nd rounder this year, and a future 1st round pick, and still get a potential impact playmaker like a guy like Mudiay. But then you'll look and see that I've got them trading up to where Portland is at 23. You've probably seen some reports, and I've envisioned this maybe for a while, that Philly's going to want to move back up into round 1, but teams in the late 20s, especially a team like Portland, may be focused on free agency with so many guys like LaMarcus Aldridge and Wesley Matthews and Arana Flalo all hitting free agency. They're not going to want to take that cap hit from that guaranteed contract they'd have to give him a 1st rounder, or that cap hold that would come from that draft pick. As a result, they could definitely be looking to peel back entirely out of round 1. And a team like the Sixers, with the draft pick currency that they have in terms of the 5 second-round picks that they own, they need to explore the thought of moving up in this draft because they need players. They need talent. And a guy like Chris McCullough, the power forward from Syracuse, is a guy that could potentially mesh well with Nerlens Noel playing at the 5. I'm not counting Embiid at this point because, frankly, the 76ers can't count on Embiid. He can't even be a factor at this moment. Anything you ever get out of him is going to be a bonus. But McCullough is a guy coming off of a torn ACL, but the torn ACL isn't the worst injury in the world. He could potentially give you some really good bang for your buck with the 23rd overall pick. And then you'll see that I've got them getting Golden State's pick. You've seen some reports when the Warriors might want to move up, but they might also want to package up that 30th overall pick along with David Lee in order to get that contract off of the books because it could put him in a bad way in terms of the luxury tax situation. Well, if you're the Philadelphia 76ers, it would be nice with all those young players that you have on the roster to bring in a veteran who just won a championship like a guy like David Lee. You have plenty of salary cap space, so it doesn't hurt. And to be able to get a 1st-round pick out of that as well would be a tremendous coup for the Philadelphia 76ers. It would be an absolutely tremendous coup. And they could sit there and you could take a draft and stash option like I have them taking Seti Osman, the wing player from Macedonia. There are options there for the Sixers. To me, the Sixers are potentially sitting anyways, unless Sam Hinkie is completely and totally an idiot and totally blows it. They're sitting in a great position of power for this draft, but also to be able to potentially affect positive results for themselves long-term in future drafts, especially Orlando moving up from 5 to 3 is probably going to have to give up a future 1st-rounder in order to go get a guy like Porzingis. In terms of other picks, let's just run through the lottery. Justise Winslow at number 6 to Sacramento. George Karl's not going to want a rookie. He really isn't. But, I don't see a scenario where the Kings deal that 6th overall pick at this particular point. If they do stay there at 6, I think Justise Winslow makes the most sense because he might be the guy most likely for them to have an immediate impact and the type of immediate impact a guy like George Karl would want. Hezonja, 7 to Denver, makes a lot of sense. They love their international players. And here's another one, a wing player that could potentially shoot and defend at a decent level at the NBA level with a bit of a swagger and attitude about him. Stanley Johnson to the Pistons at number 8. They need some perimeter scoring, a guy that can play the 3. It's a big weakness for the roster. There's a young guy that could potentially fill that role. You notice I've got Boston trading up to Charlotte's pick at number 9 to get a Willie Cauley-Stein from Kentucky. I look at Willie Cauley-Stein, and he could be a big-time impact defender at the NBA level. A big-time Tyson Chandler, DeAndre Jordan type of low-post 5. A guy, a legit rebounding, shot-blocking presence. What I really like about Cauley-Stein's game the most is the fact that as important as the pick and roll is at the NBA level, this is a guy that can switch off and guard a point guard or a 2 guard, and you don't really feel bad about it, and you're not missing a beat. So for him to be there at number 9, even though I know there are some concerns about an old foot injury, and foot injuries with big men are always concerning, I think in this particular case, Boston has to roll the dice to get a guy that could be that type of impact defender in the Eastern Conference for them they have to roll the dice and move up, get rid of picks 16 and 28 and a second rounder to go up and get him. And it makes sense in some ways for Charlotte too, because they'll still be able to get a wing player that they need, potentially a shooter a little bit later on, as I've got them taking R.J. Hunter from Georgia State, 16. To me, Frank Kaminsky from Wisconsin going to Miami at 10, I feel is almost certainly a lock now. And the reason I think that is, the more I've thought about it, looked at the Heat's draft history, I think Pat Riley likes those older players, those more experienced players, those guys that will take less adjustment and have fewer growing pains at the NBA level. And you look at a guy like Kaminsky, he's a guy that could play alongside Whiteside. He's also a guy that could play alongside Bosch. There's a lot of things that I think he's going to like about his game, and he makes a lot of sense. I've got Atlanta trading up to 11 where Indiana is to get Myles Turner from Texas, a guy whose upside is really huge, but you didn't see a lot out of him at Texas, but a guy that is definitely in some ways that you would call him a stretch four for sure. And with the contract situation for a Paul Millsap and a DeMarre Carroll, one or both of them may not be back in Atlanta, and they may decide that even if they bring in a Millsap, that they want a little more size down low to go along with Horford, and a guy like Turner can do some different things, and he might make a lot of sense there. Utah kind of is in a good position here at number 12. Somebody good is going to fall to them. In this particular case, I've got them taking Devin Booker, the shooting guard from Kentucky. One thing that I think that Utah team lacks is a real legit 2. Here's potentially a real legit 2. Is Devin Booker just a shooter at the NBA level? Time will tell. But he could be a little bit more. But at least, if anything else, he's an NBA-level shooter. Phoenix taking Sam Dekker at number 13. I think Dekker will end up going in the lottery. A lot of teams will view him as a better NBA prospect than he was a college player. The Oklahoma City Thunder end up with Cameron Payne. I think there's a chance that Payne could go higher in this draft, and I've mocked it that way before. But just based off of the scenario and the way these things played out, I just had him going 14 to Oklahoma City, and that makes sense because you could sit there and flip Westbrook out to the 2 and play them in certain lineups and situations. In terms of other teams that are potentially looking to move, I've got Brooklyn moving up to 19, trading away 29 and Mason Plumlee, to go up to where Washington is to get a guy like Rashad Vaughn, the guard from UNLV. Who else? I've got Minnesota. I highly doubt they're going to want to keep both of those second-round picks they have. I believe it's pick 31 and 36. Minnesota has a lot of young talent already, and with those 2 second-round picks, you're probably not going to get much in way of a veteran on the trade market. So they're better off trying to sit there and maybe package up one or both of those second-round picks to move up to, let's say, where the Lakers are, a team that's probably going to want to get rid of their second first-rounder because it won't do them much good, and it'll hinder them, if anything, because it'll create a situation where they would have more guaranteed money on the books that they don't want to have as they get ready to hit free agency, knowing they're going to try and make some type of splash in free agency. I can see Minnesota and the Lakers swinging a deal here where the Lakers move into round 2 where they can draft somebody under a non-guaranteed contract type of circumstance. And Minnesota could come up and get somebody, or maybe even get somebody that's a drafted stash option, like I've got them taking Gudaitis from Lithuania. A big man that you might not have to worry about bringing over for a year or 2, maybe 3. But again, those are just some general thoughts. In terms of players that I think could see their stock rise the most, and some of it's reflected in this mock draft, I think Porzingis' stock continues to go up. I think a guy like Sam Dekker's stock is going up. I think R.J. Hunter's stock is going up. Jerian Grant, Rashad Vaughn, I think their stocks are going up. Guys who could see their stocks going down, Kevon Looney from UCLA, I have as a borderline first-round pick. I think he's a guy that might even potentially drop into the second round, although I could be totally freaking wrong. I look at a guy like Tyus Jones. His stock could drop a little bit, but I don't see him dropping out of the first round. Kelly Oubre from Kansas could potentially drop out of the top 20, even though I have him going 20 to Toronto. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, who could defend at an NBA level but not do much else at this point, going all the way to 26, where most people have had him going somewhere between, let's say, 17 to 22, where the Bulls are picking. He's another guy that could see his stock going down. I think Cauley-Stein has a chance to drop out of the top 10, although I think his floor at this point in time probably is number 11, where Indiana's picking, and either Indiana would take him or somebody else would trade up to get him. But yeah, anyways, that's my 2-round mock draft. Some explanation of some things. You want more explanations, you can hit me up in the comments. Hit me up on Twitter at pfspot_Schlegel is the Twitter handle. I can't wait. Thursday, the 2015 NBA draft. Let's do this, man. Bang.